Hello and welcome back. For those who don't know us, we're a naturopathic doctor and nutritionist team helping educate and empower couples on their fertility journeys. We both have private practices in Portland, Oregon, where we live, and we own and manage an online practice together called Tiny Feet. And we take a unique functional medicine approach to fertility to offer our clients a very different experience than they would typically receive with conventional care. Our services include functional lab testing and one-on-one consults, as well as an online fertility assessment and online courses. And you can learn more about us and who we are and what we do on our website at tinyfeet.co. All right, you're listening to episode 40, and this is a very special episode because for the first time on the podcast, I will be talking about my health journey with breast implant illness. Not very many people know that I have breast implants, and I think that's common for many women. We make a decision to get the implants and we keep it very private. And that's one of the reasons why it's so important for me to tell you my story on the episode today, because it's likely that you won't hear how the implants might be affecting your health and fertility anywhere else. This is a serious issue affecting millions of women around the world, and it's important that we do our part to spread the word. Breast implant illness is not curable unless you have an explant surgery, which mine is scheduled here in just a couple weeks on August 20th. And you'll learn all about how I came to this decision in this episode. Now, I know a lot of you listening don't have implants, but I bet you know somebody who does. So I encourage you to listen to the episode or at least share this episode with them so they can learn more about this important topic, even if they're not in a space where they're trying to conceive or it's for their fertility, because it can be helpful to them. So in this episode, you're going to learn common symptoms related to breast implant illness, why breast implants can cause trouble conceiving and miscarriage, what are the appropriate steps to take if you think that you have a breast implant illness, and natural therapies that will help you heal while you're exploring your options. So I'm super excited to share my story with you, and we hope that you walk away with new insight for either yourself or for someone that you know. Now, before we get started, we want to remind you about our new online course that we anticipate to be released at the end of September called Fertile in 5 Masterclass. This course will take you through a complete 5-step preconception and fertility optimization program. We'll be covering in depth what to discuss with your doctor and how to get the right lab test before you conceive, a full nutrition and supplement protocol to help you prepare your body to build a healthy baby, and how to adjust your lifestyle to support your fertility and a healthy pregnancy, including avoiding specific toxins that can wreak havoc on your reproductive health. So to get priority notification when this course is available, as well as access to special pricing and the great bonuses that we have in store for you, jump onto our email list by downloading our free quiz, Are You Healthy Enough to Get Pregnant? Link is in the podcast description notes. All right, so let's jump into the episode.
Awesome. So we are going to do this kind of interview style with Dr. Haylee and myself so that she can really tell you her story in her own words. And first off, I just want to say how proud I am of her for telling her story. This is a really obviously very personal topic, and there's just a lot of feelings, I think, out there about plastic surgery and about breast implants and just kind of some of the body image issues that sort of lead women to get this surgery in the first place. And this is just a really vulnerable topic, and you're kind of going back in time to tell us about your mindset when you were a 20-something-year-old woman. And so I just appreciate you being willing to advocate for other women by telling your story. So I think this is awesome, and I'm excited to share this with everybody.
Thank you.
So let's kind of get started by talking about when you decided to get breast implants.
Yeah, I was 21 years old and I just moved to Las Vegas. So just those two things alone, right? Recipe for plastic surgery. So I started a new job as an insurance sales rep. And at that job, there's a woman around my age that just had implants, and she was showing them off and chatting about them. And so that got my mind kind of like percolating around them. And then soon after, I found out my aunt, who also lived in Las Vegas, I was pretty close to, also had implants. And I had no idea that she did. And she seemed to be completely fine with them. And so again, I kept thinking about it. I have a 5'9" frame, so I'm fairly tall. And at the time, obviously, at 21, I had small breasts. They were 8 cups. And so I started to obsess about this idea of getting implants. And with this new job, it was going very well. And I made enough money to pay for the implants in cash. And so that was another kind of like, well, I have the money in Las Vegas. My aunt has there's a surgeon that I actually went to her surgeon that was a family friend. So that's how I decided to do that.
Yeah, I think it's definitely become kind of not a big deal to think about making changes to our physical appearance. It's really more about what we want ourselves to look like, as opposed to like investigating the safety or like maybe doing some research on these things. So how much research did you really do before getting the surgery? Like on size, on safety, what type you should get, saline or silicone?
Well, great question. I didn't really do any research at all. I was very optimistic at that time and naive. I just trusted the process. I thought everyone around me had them and they seemed fine. And so the surgeon that did my aunt's breast implants, that was 15 years ago. And so she's had them for a really long time. And it just all seemed like, it was no big deal, just like what you were saying. So in May 2005, I went in for a consult and again, trusted that the surgeon would not steer me wrong and that he would tell me all the risks if I need, that was involved. And, at the consult, he said I qualified for silicone implants. And that means at the time in 2005, they were still off the market because of potential complications, but they were available to patients that met certain criteria. And that to me reassured me, oddly enough, that silicone was safe, because if they're allowing patients to have them back in, then that means that they did all the testing and they should be safe, right? So at that point, I just never once thought that there would be a problem. I actually, as a very naive 21-year-old, I just didn't ask very many questions, including like, is there an expiration date on these? Like, when do I have to have them redone? It just seemed like such a far away concept that I never thought to ask.
Yeah, that's not the first time that I've heard that from women who have had implants, particularly about the expiration date on these as medical devices. I'm always surprised to hear that it doesn't seem to be well covered in like pre-op surgical consults, that these are not lifetime devices, that they don't last forever. And in many cases, they need to be replaced within 10 years. And then many people keep them longer, either because they just don't have any symptoms of any issues with them. We'll talk a little bit about how that can happen. Problems can happen with them without you really even knowing that anything's wrong. But yeah, I think that's one of the big misconceptions, is that they're lifetime devices. And I think maybe there's an assumption that there's more rigorous safety testing done around medical devices, not just implants. Actually, there are others as well that kind of fall into this category. But the idea that we do rigorous enough safety testing that we understand how these can impact health long term. And that's just not the case.
No, it's not happening at all.
Right. Okay, so you had surgery that same month in May of 2005. You recovered pretty quickly. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
So when did you start to have symptoms that you're now pretty positive are related to your implants?
Yeah, so 2 years after implantation in 2007, I mentioned this before on the podcast, but I had a bad kidney infection. And ever since that kidney infection, my gut just wasn't right. It always seemed like I need to work on it in some way. I ended up with SIBO, or small intestinal bacteria, overgrowth, IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, all that. So I'm not sure if the implants had anything to do with all that and how hard it was to fully recover from that infection. I suspect that it probably had something to do with it, but it's hard to say. after that 10-year mark, so in 2015, that's when I started to kind of get worried about the implants. I became more of a grown-up adult, and I actually understood that there was a 10-year expiration date. And because I hit that 10-year expiration date, I was worried. And at this point, I was in naturopathic medical school. So I've definitely made a 180 as far as wanting to be all natural, and really worried about these devices that I put in my body at the time. So I also knew that they can rupture at any time. In 2015, that was my biggest concern, was rupture. So around that same time, in 2015, I got a migraine after doing a CrossFit workout. I came home, got a migraine, and that was really weird for me because I don't get migraines. It's very rare. But was even weirder is ever since I got that migraine, I developed a sore throat only on the left side of my throat. And I also had yellow coloring in the sclera of my left eye that stuck around for a long time, for many, many months. Also, the left side of my neck became stiff, and it would hurt. I started to see chiropractors, acupuncturists. There was a lot of theories oh, maybe it's allergies, maybe it's this or that, or I switched out my pillow. I got this really expensive pillow. Nothing really was working. And no one, including myself, ever associated this with my implants. So in 2017, I finally made the connection that maybe my left implant was ruptured, and then that's what caused maybe the migraine and some of the symptoms that I was feeling. It took a long time to get there. So it took me 2 years to actually make this connection, because I assumed if I had a rupture that there would be pain and nerve symptoms. So when I would Google it, a lot of the information online would be oh, your left arm would be, numbness and tingling and pain in your breast. And it would be really obvious that I would have a rupture, which I didn't have any of that. So, at that time, I was looking at the research in 2017, and I found out that it could be a silent rupture. So with silicone, you can have silent ruptures, which means that you don't have any symptoms, or at least you don't have the symptoms that you would normally expect to have, like the numbness and tingling and pain. So at that time, I had an ultrasound done, but they didn't find anything on the ultrasound, and that was to be expected. It's rare to see silicone rupture on ultrasound unless it's really obvious. And then the next step was to get an MRI done, but I found out I was pregnant. So soon after the ultrasound, I became pregnant with Aspen. And so because of the pregnancy, that just stopped my pursuit into investigating my implants right then and there.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you mentioned that the symptoms that you had weren't anything like what anyone would expect. And I think that sort of highlights the issue around how we study breast implants and how we look at their safety and what we tell women are potential side effects. I mean, we're looking at things that are more specific to it exploding out of its shell, right? What you're talking about, numbness or pain, nerve issues, that type of thing. We're not studying for what types of symptoms do women have that have breast implants versus women who don't. Are there autoimmune type symptoms? Are there weird things like what you're mentioning? So I wish that we had more long-term safety data on them. I'm hoping that a lot of the kind of the buzz around breast implants, which I've been seeing a lot in the media recently, I'm hoping that that will sort of spur on some better studies about them so that we can get a better handle on what are the symptoms that are associated with this, because it's difficult. Some of them can be related to a bunch of other different conditions. And so it's very hard to pin down and get a doctor to take it seriously that it could be related to implants.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Especially because most people believe that, especially with silicone, that they're totally inert devices. They don't do anything in your body. They just sit there, and silicone's totally safe. And there's no interaction with your tissues or your immune system or anything.
Well, and that's what I thought for so long, because that's what we're taught. That's the culture. That's, you think that they are perfectly safe. And even doing the research that I did, I didn't find much on the effects that silicone can have on your immune system. And if I did, it was usually like, it was, the articles would say, oh, this is very rare, like in very rare cases. And so you would just think like, oh, that's not me. Like that's
Right.
I'm not in that category.
Yeah. Who thinks that they're that like small, teeny tiny percentage that they say it's super rare?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Good point. Okay, so you're now suspecting that you have a rupture, but you haven't been able to confirm it because you got pregnant. So did you continue to have any symptoms that you thought may be related to breast implants during pregnancy?
Yeah, so the neck pain seemed to always be there. It didn't go away, and the sore throat would come and go. And that definitely depended on how much sleep that I got, if I was under a lot of stress, the diet, what I was eating or being exposed to. Um, and then about midway through, I started waking up in the morning with pretty severe headaches. It was awful because I was in my residency at this time, and being pregnant, morning headaches, and having to work like really long hours in your residency, it was just a recipe for disaster. So I came across this idea of taking N-acetylcysteine to help with detoxification, kind of like separate from the headaches. I actually didn't know that it was going to help with that, but I did start taking 600 milligrams once a day. And then I was really surprised that it fixed the morning headaches and it helped with the neck pain. So the neck pain and the sore throat got a lot better. And then, silly enough though, I just still wasn't connecting it to my implants, that my body was toxic, and that's why the NAC helped. And for those of you guys that don't know about NAC, it's a precursor to glutathione, which is the major antioxidant in our body. And so what it does is it helps build up your antioxidant stores in your body to help get rid of toxins and get them out of your body. So that's really what it was doing. And what prompted me to take it in the first place was actually I did a SNP report. So we've talked about that quite a bit, but the single nucleotide polymorphisms like MTHFR. Well, I did a report that showed me kind of how well I detoxify, and it said that I'm a pretty slow detoxifier in one of my SNPs, and it mentioned that I should take NAC. And then I did a lot of research to see if it was safe in pregnancy, and it was. So that's when I started taking it, and boom, it really helped a lot of my symptoms. But again, I didn't make the connection to the implants.
Yeah, super telling that a detoxification support supplement would make such a big difference in your in your symptoms. And so, like looking back now, it definitely makes sense for why that would have helped.
Yeah.
So what happened after you had Aspen? So she was born via C-section in January of 2018. That meant, of course, that you had to undergo major surgery as well as have antibiotics. So did this birth experience, did that make the symptoms worse for you?
Oh my gosh. Yes, Kristin. So much worse. So that was a big turning point for me. I remember that all my joints and my muscles became very stiff, and I could especially feel it in my feet, in my ankles, my calves, and also my elbows. It was really weird to feel pain in my elbows because I've just never felt that before. So I'd imagine that's like women that are struggling with rheumatoid arthritis would feel that kind of pain in their elbows. And so I thought it was all because of the C-section. And when I asked my midwife about it, like I think it was like a 2-week or 4-week follow-up with my midwife, she just was kind of baffled. Like that's not a common symptom. She asked me about a rubella vaccine. Like, did I get that, before pregnancy? Sometimes that can cause these kind of symptoms. And I was like, no. So she didn't have any information for me. And I went home and I started Googling like joint pain after pregnancy, ankle pain after pregnancy, postpartum, stiffness and stuff like that. And I couldn't find anything, like not on PubMed, nothing. So that really baffled me because I was like, this doesn't seem right. My muscles also felt very weak, and my left shoulder blade started hurting a lot. And again, I just thought it was all postpartum, that maybe my body was just, struggling to detox again, and that I just needed to push through, and that hoping with each day it would just get better and better. But I didn't get better. A year later, I'm still dealing with a lot of the muscle stiffness, joint pain, and to add to that is memory loss, brain fog, fatigue, anxiety, and also depression. So I have a long list of symptoms, but the new symptoms that pushed me over the edge just recently this year is that I've started experiencing hair loss and also bleeding gums. So that was really scary. I was like, why am I brushing my teeth and my gums are just bleeding? Like this is something that would happen with somebody who's like really nutrient deficient. And I was taking, a really healthy diet. I mean, you guys have heard me on the podcast. Like I eat well. I'm, taking all my nutrients that I need to take. So that was concerning to me.
And they were pretty sure you didn't have scurvy.
Yeah, exactly. And the hair loss. I mean, no woman wants to be losing their hair. That's so scary. And you just think that it's all going to fall out and you're going to have no hair. And when you're losing, a big clump of strands every day, it's just like, oh my gosh, you need to do something and do something quick. So I went to my doctor and had a bunch of labs done and everything came back normal. So we did like antibody testing, inflammation markers, everything super normal. And it was actually my mom that heard something on a health summit. She likes to listen to a bunch of those. So she has lots of things she brings to me. But she heard somebody talk about this woman's experience with breast implant illness and getting her implants removed. And she told me about it. And at first I didn't really listen because I just felt overwhelmed. Again, I was dealing with anxiety. I was taking care of a toddler, just was like, okay, yeah, mom, like, sure. Thanks for that. And I just kind of shoved it under a rug. But a couple of weeks later, I was still losing my hair, obviously, gingivitis. Everything was normal at the doctor. So I was like, okay, let me Google this breast implant illness. And it was insane. It was like 5 million light bulbs went off. Like when I read the website and the symptoms, and I mean, Kristin remembers I was just like furiously typing to her over chat. And I was like, all these symptoms I have. And it definitely clicked that that's what was going on, is that I'm ill because of my breast implants. So, the website I was on was healingbreastimplantillness.com. It's the most common, popular website to go to if you have any question, if this is a problem for you, and they list all the symptoms. And of course, all the symptoms that they listed, at pretty much 80% of them I had. So
yeah, you did have a lot of them, because I, of course, wanting to know how to support you and what you were going through, looked into this as well. I also know a couple of people who have implants. And so just wanted to make sure that I was as educated about that as possible. Some of them I've worked with in the past as clients too. So it's like, oh, that's kind of a light bulb. I don't think I ever thought to ask that on an intake for somebody in nutritional therapy, asking about medical devices, that medical device in particular, implants in particular, because I don't know, you think that like if somebody has like a surgical implant, like a lap band or something that affects their stomach, like, of course I would think of that. Like I would want to know about that if there was something that was affecting like the function of the digestive system. But I think I was probably like most people and like you were when you had the surgery done, just thinking silicone is inert. It doesn't do anything. Like there's really no impact. Yeah. But now, the common sense kind of sets in when you really sit down and think about it, and you consider how your body responds to having any kind of a foreign object implanted in it. And you think, oh, your immune system is going to have to either tolerate that or fight against it. And I think that there are some people that are maybe more predisposed to having more immune reactivity, a lot of where that like autoimmune type symptoms come from. Women are like 75% of the sufferers of autoimmunity in the
We're going to
US.
talk about that in a minute.
Yeah. And there's a lot of, complexities in our bodies that sort of predispose us to experiencing those things. But yeah, some really interesting things that it's been really eye-opening for me to kind of follow this experience and see everything that you've learned and
Yeah.
have.
Well, it was after I found this out. So this was about 3 months ago, in about May 2019. We added that question onto our intake forms.
We did.
Right?
Yes,
Yeah.
we did.
So
And we asked that now.
Yeah, it was only like 3 months ago. And I didn't even think to ask either, which is just crazy to me. But yeah, we just didn't think about it until after we found all this out.
Yeah. So let's talk about how this felt for you, because I'm sure, I know from experiencing this with you, that this was tough to discover, and you had a lot of kind of mixed emotions. And so how did it feel to discover that this is likely the reason that you've been experiencing all these symptoms?
I'm like welling up already, like just thinking about it. But there was just so many emotions. A big one that I had was, and I know if you have breast implants and you're listening, or if you know somebody who does, is just feeling ashamed that I did this to myself in the first place. Like that I went to that extent to enhance my natural body. Just feeling like I didn't feel good enough then, and I had to do that. And it felt like, oh, I made myself sick. Like this was my fault. I did this to myself. So that was very hard to swallow. And, I needed Matt to help kind of talk me out of that and say, you were 21 at the time and you were a very different person. And, a lot of women go through this, and it's not anything to feel ashamed of. It's just,
Right.
it's our culture. It's our culture around the world. So, but that was hard to deal with. And then I also just felt very shocked that it took me this long to connect all the dots, to finally understand what was going on. And that, again, because I'm a naturopath and like I know so much medical knowledge, that it just was like, oh my gosh, how did I miss this? It was like the elephant in the room. Like how did I miss this? So that was a hard pill to swallow too. And then also, I felt a lot of relief, like that I have a real chance of feeling better after my surgery, that the joint pain and the muscle stiffness and all that hopefully will go away. And then of course I felt a lot of urgency just to get them out of me, like now, like that immediately I was making consults, and I was like disappointed that the surgery still was like 3 or 4 months away. When you know that you have something inside of you that's slowly poisoning you every single day, there's definitely a sense of urgency that comes with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, this is a big discovery, and I totally understand, all of the mixed emotions that you had around this. And I just want to encourage anyone who's listening that is feeling similarly to what you felt, Haylee, about this, like especially the shame piece and the feeling like guilty and ashamed that you did this to yourself. We don't know what we don't know. And I think that is one of the issues of the way that we're sort of handling the whole subject of plastic surgery in the medical community, as if it's just really not a big deal, that there aren't very many risks to these devices, that they're lifetime devices, that there's nothing that we need to worry about. Part of that is the lack of safety studies, but part of that is just patient education at the time that women are wanting these implants, and relying on surgeons to give accurate information about the risks associated with these devices. And there are quite a few. I mean, if you just read the literature, what's known about the risks, there is quite a bit there. And I just don't feel like that's emphasized enough. And of course, these are cosmetic surgeries, so they're not covered by insurance. And so it is a plastic surgeon's livelihood to implant you. And so I'm not saying that doctors are trying to hide risks or anything, but I think it's a difficult conversation to have with a patient, to really fully warn them about the risks of a cosmetic surgery when it's also affecting their livelihood. If a woman decides not to go through with an implant surgery.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just want to encourage you not to feel that way. If you're listening to this and all the light bulbs are going off, like that, maybe that first thing that you're going to feel is like negative emotions, but try to get through that as quickly as possible, because now you know, and you can be empowered and you have an opportunity to do something now that you know you can make a different choice. So
yeah.
Just some
Well
words
said.
of encouragement there. Okay, so let's kind of fast forward to today and tell us kind of where you're at with everything. You mentioned that you have your surgery scheduled. Kind of what's the game plan from here?
Yeah, so surgery was scheduled August 20th. Super excited about that. Counting down the days now. And now that I'm aware of why my body is reacting, I've decided to start a cleanse to prep my body for surgery and for a full recovery. I started that cleanse just a few days ago on August 1st, and it includes a ton of fruits and vegetables, spirulina, barley grass powder, and dulse flakes, Atlantic dulse flakes. So a lot of this idea is to help support my liver in order for it to kind of clear out any gunk or toxins. And over time, when your body is constantly exposed to this like constant source of toxins, your liver can get sluggish. And so really boosting the support for my liver. And so I'll be updating you guys on my progress of the cleanse and the X-Plan and all that in upcoming episodes.
Awesome. Yeah, so let's kind of move on. We've sort of come to the end of your tale as far as we have information for, so we'll find out more after your surgery. So let's talk about how having breast implants may affect fertility in some women.
So silicone and saline, they produce a capsule around it. It's kind of like scar tissue that your body does right after X-Plant to wall off the X-Plant, which is, it's kind of funny because it's like, well, that's one indication that your body doesn't like the implant, but it creates this this capsule. And then also the implants, of course, have a casing. And so over time, the casing that the silicone and saline is in is weakened and thinned. And then during that time too, it's also outgassing through the casing into the body. It includes heavy metals, chemicals, even vinyl. A lot of, like Kristin was mentioning, is that we think that it's just silicone and it's just saline. That's completely not true. Like, these implants have formaldehyde in them. There's lots of things inside these implants, especially the casing of the implant that is leaking out into your body. Even with a no rupture, like, it's leaking out into your body. So it can slowly leak and travel through the lymphatic system, into the armpit, your neck area, and pretty much anywhere in your body. And you can't see this on ultrasound. And it really, if you have an enlarged lymph node or if it's in your lymphatic system, the really only way to know that is through a needle biopsy. So, and then women's immune systems are very different than men. I don't think many people know this, but ours are always overloaded because of our menses, our periods. It takes 80% of our immune system to have a monthly cycle for a week out of every single month. And because our immune systems have to work overtime during this time period, women are much more susceptible to external triggers and become sick. So especially with autoimmune conditions such as Hashimoto's. We've said previously, I think in episode 39 on low thyroid and Hashimoto's, is that it's 1 out of 10 women have Hashimoto's, and it's 4 times more common in women.
Yeah, it's much more common in women.
Mm-hmm. And all autoimmune conditions are much more common in women. And that's part of the reason, is that our immune systems are much more taxed on a monthly basis. And so they're easily more tippable to like go over the edge.
And it's also Yeah.
Go
It's
ahead.
also really interesting, like what happens and how your symptoms kind of worsened after pregnancy. Now, you had some
Yeah.
other confounding factors like the C-section and antibiotics and stuff like that. But, there's a big shift that has to happen in the immune system to accommodate a pregnancy to make sure that the immune system actually allows a healthy baby to grow. And then that kind of reshifts after delivery. So your immune system kind of relaxes a little bit to
Mhm.
allow your baby to grow safely inside of you. And then it kind of rebalances itself. And for somebody who is already maybe like tipped slightly toward the autoimmune side of the spectrum, that can rebound really hard after pregnancy. And then if you have something in your body that may be encouraging your immune system to be even more on guard, or you're leaching chemicals into your body from an implanted medical device, that can just place additional tax on the immune system. And I think it's one of the reasons that it's very common to see autoimmunity flare after pregnancy, because we
Yeah.
have all of these things kind of going on. And then women who have breast implants also have an additional stressor that's stimulating the immune system
Yeah.
alongside that.
Exactly. Yep, exactly. Yeah. So your body starts creating auto antibodies, attacking your own tissues, trying to fight off this constant source of toxins. And this constant flow of toxins can, again, make your liver sluggish. And a sluggish liver can cause hormonal imbalances, skin issues. So a lot of women with implants will have weird skin rashes, and just either specific parts of their body, like on their chest area, or just on their back, or even all over. You can have abnormal weight gain. So it's really common that after explant, the women will lose like 10 or 20 pounds. And a lot of that has to do with just plain inflammation, and water retention. And of course, just many, many more symptoms. And so everybody's body is going to be different. But those are some of the more common things.
I
And
think egg
then,
quality too could be like
yeah,
majorly impacted. If you're overburdening your liver, you're, creating some oxidative damage in the body, you're reducing your body's ability to keep up with that oxidative load by, producing antioxidants like glutathione. You're forcing it to deal with all these chemicals, and it doesn't
yeah.
have enough to keep your eggs healthy and stuff too.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. So that's one of the reasons why, of course, we wanted this to be on the Mastering Your Fertility podcast, because if you have breast implants or even some other medical device and are having trouble getting pregnant or having multiple miscarriages, it's definitely something that is probably contributing. So, it just causes this chronic inflammation that can also affect the uterine lining, as well as the egg quality. And then also your body may think it's just not safe to reproduce. And so it shuts down the production of essential hormones like progesterone and DHEA. And again, it increases your risk for miscarriage.
So a lot of different things potentially at play for fertility. And this likely isn't something that a conventional medical doctor would bring up to you. I mean, I think even a lot of
No.
alternative, practitioners just don't know
Oh,
that
I
they don't
didn't.
know to
I
ask.
didn't think to
We
ask.
admitted we didn't ask about this in our intake previously, either in our separate practices or at Tiny Feet until
Yeah.
recently, until your kind of story brought this to light for us. So I think a lot of women are having their symptoms associated with other things, and they're some people are just going down the rabbit hole of functional medicine. They're doing all these expensive tests
Oh,
and trying to
yeah.
figure out what's going
100%.
on with them. And, maybe the answer's been there all along and we just haven't been looking into it. So
Right.
really good points about how that affects fertility. So for those that are listening, either that have breast implants or know someone close to them that has implants and are maybe hearing this information for the first time, what is your advice for them?
Well, first, it's totally normal to be in a state of denial or not wanting to believe that there's anything wrong with your implants. And that may be true for you for now. But just know that all implants do have an expiration date, and it's not a matter of if you'll get sick, it's just a matter of when. And when it comes to trying to conceive and pregnancy, I wouldn't do it again now that I know what I know. I'm so grateful to have my daughter. And as far as I know, she is healthy. but I definitely was putting her at risk, and I just didn't know it at the time. My immune system was compromised, and so many things could have gone wrong. And I do feel that my implants are the reason that she had to be born C-section. There was some issues with my placenta at the end of the pregnancy, and I'm pretty confident that that was due to the toxic load that I was under, that my placenta just couldn't keep up anymore. So my advice is to first go to Healing from Breast Implant Illness website to see the list of common symptoms and see if they relate to you, if you feel like that's something that you're dealing with. And also join the Facebook group to hear about other women's stories. It's a very active Facebook group, and there's a lot of women on there that can help kind of sort out if this is something that you need to do and if you need to consider explant.
There's like 80 or 90,000 women in that Facebook group. Like,
oh yeah,
I think it's really tempting, especially if you're in this position and you might be in that state of denial and not ready to acknowledge that something may be off with your implants and that it may be affecting your health. I think it's easy to kind of dismiss this type of experience that we're talking about today as rare and not going to affect you, that right. You're not going to be in that teeny tiny percentage of people that experience problems. But I think the definition of what it means to experience problems with implants needs to change. And we need to be including a lot more symptoms in the possible side effects of having breast implants. And so I would just encourage everybody to be open-minded about that. And if you see yourself in that list of symptoms, I know it's scary. I know it's overwhelming. There's a lot of things to think about. It's not always covered by insurance to have your implants removed, especially because we don't have the medical research to show the justification for all these different symptoms that you may be experiencing. So there's only a few things that would qualify you to have your explant surgery covered by insurance. So there's that.
That reminds me, Kristin, is that I did want to tell the listeners my experience with insurance is that I did decide to get an MRI recently, and I really thought that my left implant was ruptured. Even after all the research that I've been doing, I really thought that it was still like a micro tear at least. And because I was having so many left-sided symptoms, and I went into the MRI and it came back where there was no rupture. And part of me was really disappointed because it was like, I was hoping that I could use that to support insurance coverage. And then also because I really thought there was a rupture. And so I wanted to be like, validated for that. But I also was very relieved to know that I didn't have like that large amount of silicone being leaking into my body. And so in my case, it was very much, it is very much a thinned casing issue, just past their expiration date and lots of immune reactions going on. And I do have to pay out of pocket because of that, because the insurance is really only going to cover it for capsular contracture and rupture. And a progressive insurance company might cover it for any old reason. So there's always it's good to always try, but those are usually the two reasons they'll cover it.
And, I don't know if anybody has heard about this yet, but the FDA recently recommended a recall of a certain type of textured implant that's produced by one particular company, although all implants do carry this risk, but it's a type of lymphoma. It's not breast cancer. It's a type of lymphoma called breast implant associated anaplastic large cell lymphoma. And so there's been several hundred cases of this identified, and there have been deaths from this particular type of cancer. And so that is another reason that insurance would likely cover an explant if that was identified in somebody. That's another thing. At least we're moving, I think, in a better direction in terms of what the FDA is kind of recommending in terms of oversight and understanding that breast implant illness is real. They've recently released a statement that essentially acknowledged that some women experience problems with their implants that resolve when the implants are removed. They kind of stop short of saying, yes, breast implants cause illness in some women, but I think it's at least a step in the right direction toward
Yeah.
getting these symptoms and this illness taken seriously by the medical profession. So it might still take some time, but I think we are moving in a better direction than just dismissing women's symptoms out of hand and not taking things seriously.
Yeah.
So from there, you have told us a lot about your story and your symptoms. What are some of the natural therapies that might help women feel better while they're exploring their options?
So for liver support, I've already mentioned N-acetylcysteine, or NAC, which was a lifesaver for me. That's the precursor, again, to glutathione. I also started liposomal glutathione. And the most affordable kind of glutathione that I can find, because it can be kind of expensive, was through Core Med Science. And then I also started incorporating herbal teas to support liver, such as dandelion root, licorice root, fennel, and lemon balm. And those are all can support the liver's detoxification pathways. And another thing is breast implants can deplete zinc. And I've definitely have always thought that I was depleted in zinc, but couldn't quite figure out why. And so this was interesting to finally make the connection. And you'll want to replenish your zinc stores with a supplement. I take zinc within a trace minerals supplement by Pure Encapsulations, and then also add an additional 30 milligrams of zinc on top of that. Zinc supports the immune system, so I guess it does make sense that zinc would be depleted if your immune system is constantly on high alert, because you're just running through it so quickly. I also take activated B complex with methylfolate, vitamin C, fish oil, 200 milligrams of 5-HTP, which is a precursor to serotonin, to help with mood. Adrenal support to help, of course, my adrenals that are shot, and mushroom extract to strengthen the immune system. So for diet, I avoid dairy and gluten. And more recently, I've started avoiding some of the more, all of the triggers, really. I've been just focusing on fruits and vegetables, mainly. And so I started avoiding eggs, soy, corn, pork, and canola oil. I also started the cleanse, which includes celery juice in the morning, a heavy metals detox smoothie, cucumber juice, salads, veggie soup, and fruits for snacks. And this cleanse, if you haven't heard of him, he's pretty amazing. It's derived from Anthony Williams' Medical Medium Thyroid Healing book. You can go to his website, Medical Medium, and he has a lot of information about these celery juice, cucumber juice, the heavy metals detox and all that, or smoothie. And I chose this because I like how it incorporates a lot of fruits and vegetables as healing foods instead of adding a lot of supplements. This is literally a cleanse or program that you can follow just by going to the grocery store. You don't need extra special powders or, again, supplements and things like that. So I like that. I'm also working on calming and supporting the immune system through just breathing, relaxation, sleeping, and all that, and getting ready for surgery.
Yeah. Well, I am just so excited for you to go through your explant surgery and hopefully feel so much better. I think it's interesting because there have been a lot of people that I've heard of kind of, I guess, booing the whole explant process because they're like, oh, well, I knew someone that had their implants removed and their symptoms didn't get better. And, I think there's a lot of complexity around how these devices can affect the body. And sometimes, having the functional medicine knowledge is really what's needed, I think, to ultimately achieve healing, because when we have these things in our bodies for a long time, we can start to see this sort of cascade of issues that can happen from that. And some of that dysfunction doesn't just immediately go away when you remove the device. Some of that requires, rebuilding your adrenals and kind of rebalancing your hormones. Maybe it's throwing off some things in your gut. One of the things that I have seen that's really common on the breast implant healing website is candida or yeast overgrowth, which can form in the gut as a protective mechanism against heavy metal toxicity. And so something like that doesn't always just go away. Your body might need support with detoxification. So just if anybody is hearing a lot about that and they're like, well, I knew somebody that explanted and they didn't feel better, just know that it's not necessarily an immediate like magic solution for everybody, but it is the first step to healing. And it is necessary if you're experiencing a lot of these symptoms, to ultimately heal. You may need other support too. And that's where finding a fabulous naturopathic or functional medicine practitioner to help you through that process can really be key. But healing starts with explant. So
yeah, so true. Well put. It actually reminds me of one of the tenets of naturopathic medicine is removing obstacles to cure. And that's one of the biggest things we talked about on one of the episodes with Razzie Berry that is so important to healing is that we constantly are kind of like adding things, supplements, this and that, and be like, oh, this will cure you. But we don't put as much emphasis on like what's stopping you from getting better. And I know that Kristin coming up is going to talk to us about her experience with a potential obstacle to cure. So just dropping that little hint there. And mine was these implants, a big obstacle to cure. So removing those, get it out of the way, and then really go on my healing journey. And that's why I'm starting it now before surgery, because I'm hoping that my body just feels super loved and nourished and like ready to be like, yes, let's, I'm ready to get better. Let's do this.
Yeah. Well, and you're also going to be trying to conceive again within the next year or so. That's a big goal of yours. And so, doing this and now that kind of like a know better, do better, you want to try to prevent any potential complications with your next pregnancy as much as possible. And I think it's really admirable that you took this really seriously and ran with this to try to heal before you start trying to conceive again. So
thank you.
Really inspirational for others out there on the journey. So I think that we are going to go ahead and wrap things up here. Thank you guys so much for joining us. If you have questions about this, especially if you have questions about Dr. Haylee's story, feel free to reach out to us. Definitely check out the website about breast implant illness as well as the Facebook group. There are some just incredible stories and journeys in there. And I think it's very validating and helpful for you to get the support that you need on this journey. It can be difficult to find that in the medical community, especially if you've been chasing down weird, random symptoms that don't seem to be related to anything else and that you just can't get to the bottom of. So seek out that support where it exists and, kind of let that bolster you and encourage you on your journey. So
absolutely.
We'll see you next week.
All right, guys. We'll see you next week.